What's up, everyone? So I want to go over how to replace a carburetor on a Stihl, weed eater, or combi unit, anything of this general type. Now, this is going to be very generic. It's not going to be for your specific one. However, Stihl is basically very, very similar to itself. They like to keep their certain processes, certain things they like to do, and this is going to be a very generic overview of what we need to do. So I want to go over should you clean or replace, how to do it, and a couple of things to kind of look after. So the first part we're just going to be talking, and that's going to be my recommendation on whether you should clean or replace it. Should you clean or replace it? Well, if you have the skill, if you have the tools, which it really isn't, to be honest, all that many things, just a couple screwdrivers, maybe a pair of pliers here and there, and that's about it, then yeah. The problem is this: you're going to need to buy a rebuild kit. A lot of those times those kits are a little expensive, basically the same price as a aftermarket carb, definitely far cheaper than a OEM carb though. So you know, you kind of have to weigh your options there. One, if you have the skill, then go ahead and buy an OEM kit and go ahead and do that. There's a couple pitfalls in that though. Some carbs, even though you put a new kit in there and you clean them as best as you can, unless you're really going to disassemble it 100%, which isn't really as easy as you would assume, there's going to be small little pieces that are going to cause an issue, and that's where it kind of falls into the realm of maybe I should just replace it. Now, replacing it, there's a couple benefits. One benefit is it definitely is going to be time saving, so you don't really have to worry about cleaning it, because that can take a little bit of time for sure, especially if you don't have all the tools, ultrasonic cleaner and whatnot. Drawbacks to that is if you buy an aftermarket one, you're kind of throwing a little bit of luck into the mix. Some of them are great, some of them are complete trash, so you can go down that avenue of meh, or you just buy an OEM one. The problem with the OEM ones is that they are very expensive in some cases. Like one weed eater, I don't remember exactly when I got it, but I think it was about 3 months ago. It was $110, brand new. I mean, it's crazy. The aftermarket version of that was $21. So that brings me to, should you buy an OEM or aftermarket? It's really up to you. If you really want to not have any question, the Stihl OEM ones work perfect. They are meant for it. They are tuned for it. You might have to do a little bit of fine tuning, but that's it. Aftermarket ones, well, they're QCs all over the board. So stick with the bigger ones that you can find. The benefit of the aftermarket ones is usually gives you a lot of stuff you may not need. So yeah, this owner opted to replace it because I do like to give them the opportunity to choose, and they chose to replace it. So hence the reason why the video is called How to Replace a Carburetor instead of How to Rebuild One. So moving on, first things first is I loosen the fuel cap. The reason being is sometimes, majority of the time, there's pressure in the tank, and when you start to remove the fuel lines, it's going to be a problem. Most of these carbs, that when you take off the air filter cover, it's just going to be a couple T-bits and it slides right off. Sometimes you have this weird little cover on the side. Sometimes, you know, whatever you need to do, get to this situation. Almost always is an 8mm or 5/16. Now, depending on yours, you might have like a little vent tube connecting to this piece. Sometimes you'll have, like in this case, it's actually two. There's a little port off the carb and a vent tube. So when you take it off, be very careful, because in this case, like I said, I have two, and you don't really want to rip one of them off. There we go. And if you do have a vent tube, usually it's on the bottom section here. Now, One good thing to say about Stihl is their fuel lines are top grade. You rarely have to change them. If you are going to be changing them out though, that's going to be above and beyond the scope. I'll give you two very common types. There's one where you just pop it out of the tank. It comes in this little, usually green, little, I don't want to say kit, but it's just like a little base that goes in at the top of the tank, and two lines come out. On the bottom, there's just a fuel line that goes into the tank, and you'll put a fuel filter on. That's it. Make sure the fuel filter is where it needs to be in the tank. Make sure it's not like up here or anything. And that's it. But if you're going to be like this individual and told me to just replace the carb, to be honest, unless they're bad, you really don't need to. But don't tell those enthusiasts out there. The other one that is going to be fairly common is where it just has like this little plug, and sometimes they have little barbs in there. You just take the barb out, put a fuel line in, shove it back in, or you could put the fuel line directly on top of it, wherever you prefer. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to turn the choke on and turn you off. I'm going to blow some of this crap out of our way. Okay, so this is another problem with aftermarket carbs. This bottom point was a hair too big, and usually you can slip on that little tube over it before it actually touches this little black piece I was mentioning earlier. I couldn't, so I had to kind of angle it and bend it a little bit, and it didn't really like that. Caused a little bit of a problem, but we survived. So next we do need to do our throttle. So however yours came off, do the exact opposite. I'll show you mine just in case you have the same one. So if you have the same one as me, basically what I do is this. I push it to like right about halfway, and then at that point there's a little hook at the end of the throttle line or throttle cable, and that hook is perfectly like in line with the little slot, and then it slides right in. When it's at idle, it's at an angle in the slot and it won't actually come out. If it's full throttle, same thing, except it's also under tension. If it's under half throttle, it's all the way up and the hook is going to be holding it in place, so it shouldn't really come out. And judging by how difficult it was to take off, that's good. Next, we have two very different size fuel lines. They do that on purpose, so let's go ahead and put the fuel line back on. Tall one goes up high, short one goes down low. The Germans may over-engineer almost everything, but at least the fuel lines on a Stihl had some type of thought behind them. The question is, how far do you put the lines? Pretty much as far as you can. You're not going to get... Basically, you don't want it to come off. Now, fuel lines should be a little bit smaller, and then when they stretch over there, and if yours is hard and kind of has like a memory, it's not going to stretch over it, and you might get leaking. So that's another sign when you need to replace your lines. Before we continue any further though, we need to put our cap back on tight, and we need to compress the primer bulb. Uh-oh. We have a leak somewhere. Oh, you know what I did? I put the wrong... This is the vent. This is the fuel line that we need. Just spilling fuel all over the place. But this is why we test it. Don't know why I didn't see that, but I didn't. But no harm, no foul. The lines are fine. It's on there. Let's give it a pull again. Now what I'm looking for is the primer bulb to fill up about halfway, maybe a little more. With no leaks. I don't see any leaks. Besides the leak that was there before, I'm going to just dry it off, make sure there's nothing else. It can leak down the center, so if you have a defective carb, that's where it's going to leak. I'm looking in there, I don't see anything. It can also leak at the joints on the fuel or where the fuel connects to the carb. Don't see anything. Also can leak anywhere on the fuel line. Maybe you damaged it, so you want to check that as well. So far so good. I think we're good to go. Now we want to take our vent. I'm going to put it on after. Sometimes it's a little easier to do that. Put that back on. And we're going to take our vent line. There we go. Same thing as before, as tied as far up as you can. Pretty much where the stock OEM location was. And then we put our 8mm back on. If you have any other covers, whatever order your covers came off, put them in back on. If you have a new air filter, put said new air filter in. There we go. Okay. There we go. And then we put our cover back on. That's too tight. There we go. Perfect. So, if you have a Stihl OEM carb, you most likely don't have to do any tuning at all, and this should be fine. If you have an aftermarket one, more likely than not, they gave you a tuning driver. And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to look at my other video on how to tune a 2-cycle. Basically, I'll give you a shortened version of it. Do the low until you just get a nice, there's no smoke, it's at a nice level. Rev it up to a point where it's a hair rich, just a hair, and then go back to low, make sure that it didn't affect the low, change if anything and go back. If you did change anything to low, go back to the high, kind of go back and forth till you find that happy medium, and then you go and use it. And then while using it, it gets hot, you see if you need to make any fine-tune adjustments. More likely than not you will, because one, it's hot and you just got done using it, and under load things can change a little bit. So keep that tuning driver handy, make some adjustments on the field, and that's it. So it's pretty easy. Like I said, I made a mistake. If you make a mistake, don't worry about it. Just know that if you follow these steps, test along the way, and make sure you look at everything before you go changing anything, before you take anything off. Make sure you have all the right parts. You should be able to do a full replacement in like 10-15 minutes. Understandably, yours may be different. I apologize, I can't do all of them at the same time for you, but the things are always going to be the same. Almost always torque bits to remove the cover. Almost always 5/16 to remove the plate for the carb. Fuel lines, they might be different, but they come off the same way. You might not have to press the primer bowl to take it off. If you don't, then that's even easier. The main wild card is how the throttle goes on. Just know that before you take it off, look at it, make sure you know where exactly it needs to be, and just take it off very carefully. You don't want to interrupt anything. Because at the end, you want to make sure it moves up and down, and it does. The throttle, of course. If it's hard or jammed in any way, then take it back off and see what's going on. Probably should have done that before we put the final cover on, but majority of them, you can tell if it's on wrong. Some of them, especially the one with the little round piece on the end, that one might be a little bit more prone for these issues. But these little hooks, that's fine. So, hope you like it. Follow me on Instagram at SmallEngine101. If you like what you see, definitely keep watching. Put a thumbs up if it helped you out, because that helps me out as well. And I'll catch you on the next video. Have a good night.